All right, let's just dive right into this explainer and unpack a seriously fascinating, multi-layered story from the ancient Panchatantra. This is way more than just a simple fairy tale. It's honestly a masterclass in strategy. It reveals some pretty timeless truths about human psychology, vulnerability, and, well, the art of manipulation. We're going to break down exactly how a perfect con is executed, step by step, right from the text's own rich examples.
To truly get a grip on this masterpiece of strategy, we're going to navigate its famous Russian doll structure. So we'll hit 1. The hoarding holy man. 2. The swindler's perfect con. 3. The jackal's fatal greed. 4. Fables as political strategy. And finally 5. Lessons in trust and deceit. That's exactly how the text teaches complex lessons, by hiding stories inside of stories.
All right, part 1, The Hoarding Holy Man and Dev Sharma's Secret.
Right off the bat, there's this massive, glaring contrast between expectations and reality here. So, by definition, a sannyasi is a holy ascetic, someone who has completely renounced all worldly goods and desires. They usually live in a matha, which is this lonely, isolated monastery meant for super quiet contemplation. That's what our guy Dev Sharma was supposed to be. But who is he really?
Well, he's the absolute picture of hypocrisy. Dev Sharma preached all day that life is transient, right? But behind closed doors, he was secretly piling up this massive fortune by selling fine, expensive garments that visitors gifted him. And because he was so rich, he was deeply paranoid. He trusted literally nobody. The guy actually slept with a heavy treasure purse tightly wedged under his armpit. His whole outward spiritual identity, just a total facade hiding this intense, consuming greed.
There's this great ancient aphorism from the text that points out how the sheer burden of his hidden wealth turns his supposedly peaceful, holy life into a total nightmare, constant, agonizing paranoia. The text says, gaining money is an arduous toil, and guarding it is even more of a trial. Coming and going money causes trouble. Damn, this unending source of worry. He's completely trapped by his own secret. And it's exactly this unending worry that leaves him wide open to anyone sharp enough to notice his anxiety.
Which brings us to part 2. The Swindler's Perfect Con, Ashadbuti's Plan.
So, Dev Sharma's extreme paranoia is the perfect setup for our antagonist. Enter Ashadbhuti, a totally cunning, eagle-eyed swindler. Now, he doesn't just kick the monastery door down to rob the guy. He assesses the physical security, the high gates, the thick walls, and realizes, okay, brute force won't work. Instead, he goes for a brilliantly patient psychological long con. He decides to completely bypass those physical barriers using honeyed words. He exploits the monk's spiritual ego, literally begging this wealthy hypocrite to save him from the meaningless ocean of life.
And the bait works. But Dev Sharma is still paranoid, obviously. He agrees to take Ashadbhuti on as a disciple, but slaps him with incredibly strict conditions. Ashadbhuti is banned from entering the monastery at night, he has to sleep out in the dirt in a thatched hut by the gate, and he has to do these degrading chores, like massaging the monk's hands and feet. But here's the thing. To keep his cover, the swindler willingly submits to the whole shebang. He plays the perfect humble student, just patiently waiting for his opening.
And this is wild. Right as Dev Sharma agrees to take him on, he actually quotes the exact rule he's breaking. He recites this proverb saying, "A king is ruined through bad advisors, a sannyasi through company." He literally voices the exact danger of letting someone into his solitary life, but he does it anyway just to feed his own ego. He is practically begging for his own downfall here through sheer blind arrogance.
Moving on to part 3, The Jackal's Fatal Greed, a Distraction in the Bushes. So after biding his time, rubbing the monk's feet, sleeping out in the dirt, Ashadbhuti finally gets his shot. A nearby village invites the monk to a ceremony, forcing him out into the open world. During the trek, nature calls. Dev Sharma has to step off the path to use the bushes, but obviously he can't take his massive treasure in there with him. So in a moment of just supreme irony, he folds his life's fortune into his robe, hands it to his disciple, and tells him to guard it with the vigilance of a yogi. I mean, handing over your secret wealth to a swindler while you go to the bathroom, that's the fatal error. Ashadbhuti just grabs the bag and vanishes into thin air.
Now, you kind of have to wonder how on earth did this hyper-paranoid monk not immediately notice his brand new disciple bolting down the road? What in the world could possibly hold his attention long enough for the thief to make a totally clean getaway? Well, while he was in the bushes, he got completely captivated by this really bizarre bloody scene unfolding just a little ways off in the distance.
He's watching these two massive, magnificent golden rams violently charging and smashing into each other over and over again. It's brutal. They're fighting so hard that blood is just oozing into the dirt. And suddenly, totally drawn in by the scent, this bloodthirsty jackal rushes right into the middle of their battlefield to lick the spilled blood off the ground.
Dev Sharma is just watching this in morbid fascination. The jackal is so blinded by its craving for the blood that it completely ignores the massive animals charging right at each other. It gets caught squarely between the two fighting rams, takes a violent hit to the head, and is killed instantly. This brutal, completely sudden fate of the greedy jackal serves as a really dark mirror to Dev Sharma's own situation. Think about it. Both the holy man and the wild animal are utterly destroyed by their own uncontrollable, obsessive desires.
Okay, part 4. Fables as political strategy. Damanaka's master plan.
If we zoom out of the fable for a second, we hit the true genius of the Panchatantra. Damanaka, who's a jackal functioning as this sharp political strategist, takes those two completely different events, the foolish monk getting robbed and the greedy jackal getting crushed, and he brilliantly weaves them together into one unified argument. He tells his partner that misplaced trust and unchecked greed always lead to ruin. His exact takeaway is basically, the jackal between the fighting rams and the Sanyasi who trusted a Shadbhuti were themselves to blame. And Damanaka uses the moral of the Sanyasi's total foolishness to justify his own incredibly calculated Machiavellian strategy. See, he wants to separate his fierce master, the lion, from the wise bull. He knows for a fact he can't pull that off with physical power. So just like the swindler, he maps out a plan to use clever wit instead of brute force. He's going to subtly sow seeds of discord between the two friends until they tear each other apart from the inside out.
Finally, part 5. Lessons in trust and deceit. Brushing destiny aside.
Damanaka's partner, Kartika, is actually terrified this scheme is going to backfire. He's convinced the lion is way too fierce and the bull is way too wise, and that this whole manipulative con is doomed. But Damanaka completely shuts him down. He recites this super powerful verse, basically arguing that fortune, represented by the goddess Lakshmi, favors the bold. He says, Lakshmi bestows her favors on the zealous man. She scorns the idle who depend entirely on luck. So brush destiny aside and try with all your might. The text is making this totally forceful argument against being passive. It's telling us to brush destiny aside, refuse to sit idle, and use every single ounce of strategy and wit we have to survive in a really dangerous world. Basically, you don't wait for luck, you manufacture it.
And I'll leave you with Damanaka's incredibly chilling final thought here. It's actually a teaser for yet another manipulative tale about a crow and a cobra. He says, what cannot be achieved by force can be achieved through deceit. This whole nested structure constantly forces us to ask a really heavy question. In the brutal pursuit of survival and power, is the cleverness of deceit actually more powerful than raw brute strength? Think about exactly how the swindler operated and how Damanaka plans to operate. It's a seriously fascinating question to chew on. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into the text, and I really hope this explainer has given you a totally new perspective on the mechanics of strategy and human nature.